Good afternoon. Welcome to the Software Engineering Institute's webinar series. My name is Shane McGraw, and I'd like to thank you all for attending today's webinar. Our webinar series presentation today is Agile Development in Software Architecture, Crossing the Great Divide, presented by speaker Nanette Brown.
Hi. Well, the metaphor for today's talk is crossing the Great Divide, so I thought it might be fun to take a look at what the Great Divide actually is. And this is a picture of the continental divide of the Americas, also known as the Great Divide. And as you can see, it starts up in Alaska, goes through Canada, continental US, and through Mexico. Now, up in the Canadian portion, there's a trail that's known as the Great Divide Trail, and it separates British Columbia from Alberta. And in Wikipedia, there was a description of this trail, and they say it's a wilderness hiking trail in the Canadian Rockies. It crosses the divide about 30 times. And the Great Divide Trail is not officially recognized by Parks Canada and therefore is not signed and not always even an actual trail, sometimes merely a wilderness route. And I think this is a good metaphor for this talk in that we will not necessarily today be traveling down a well-paved road. Our trip will be exploratory, maybe a little rocky at times, but it will be, I hope, a trip worth taking. So I'm thinking about this idea of the Great Divide. There's three real questions to consider. One, is there really a great divide between Agile and architecture? If so, why is there a great divide? And why do we need to cross it? So in terms of whether there really is a great divide, I think there is. In some places, it's wider than in others. You definitely have people who are working to blend and adapt practices across Agile and architecture, but you also have Agile practitioners who will talk disparagingly about architecture as BDUF, big design up front, and refer to architects as dwelling in ivory towers. And at the same time, you'll have architects who will describe Agilists as lacking foresight and discipline, spinning their wheels in endless cycles of refactoring. So the Great Divide exists, and the next question would be why? And I think some of the answer lies in the fact that each set of practices grew up in response to different environmental conditions. And by that, I mean the different problem spaces that each group was focused on. So originally, Agile practices were applied to smaller projects, often with a few easily identifiable stakeholders, many times focused at the application level, developing internet or intranet-based apps, typically using higher-level technologies and frameworks. On the other hand, architectural practices evolved on larger-scale, complex, multi-year projects, high reliability, safety-critical environments, applied not only to large-scale enterprise frameworks, but also to complex embedded systems, Department of Defense projects, and so forth. So these projects grew up on each side of a divide, and they evolved essentially in isolation to cope effectively with the problems that were presented by their respective environments. So then why do we need to cross this divide? And the answer lies in the fact that over time, and particularly over the past several years, the problem spaces that Agile and architectural practices are addressing have started to converge. The success of Agile practices has led to the demand to apply them to increasingly larger projects, even complex mission-critical applications. And as the Agile community ventures into this space, architectural practices have a lot of valuable guidance to offer. Now, and at the same time, the large-scale project environments in which architectural practices have been applied are seeing a lot of changes. There's a increasing demand for continuous realization of value. So the days when enterprises or government was willing to wait years before seeing a payoff are dwindling. And also, the days when a project's target environment remains stable over several years are disappearing. The idea used to be you could get your requirements, understand your target environment, go off and develop for a couple years, and when you were done, your original requirements were still valid and your target environment had remained pretty much unchanged. And I think we all know that those days are coming to an end.